you are not getting your income tax return in the timeframes, in the service charter timeframes, and you have submitted or requested information, then all I really want, all I can recommend, there's a couple of recommendations that I can have, and those are standard. And unfortunately, I can't do much about changing these other than getting these examples escalated to the appropriate people as soon as possible so that they can actually start fixing things on the SARS side. Okay, so first things first, double check with the call center that there isn't some outstanding letter that somewhere along the line actually got lost and that you are not aware of, that you think should have been there but isn't actually. All right. The second issue is that's the point at which you then escalate, and you escalate as soon as possible. What are your escalation channels? First things first is the complaints management office. Right. Success with the complaints management office, varying degrees. Some people are great, think they're fantastic. Other people think they're awful. One piece of advice I can give you, because this seems to have been an ongoing problem, if you phone the call center to follow up on an issue, they'll give you a reference number. If you then go and complain and issue an escalation on the CMO, don't use your call reference number, use the original submission reference number. Because the way e-filing works is if you use the call reference number and you phoned yesterday, then the system's going to say, but that's only a day old, and kick it out. Whereas if you use the original submission or verification reference number, it works off the correct date and will escalate appropriately. Okay, so that's one issue which seems to have come through. The second escalation process is with refunds, is to have a look at is to contact your branch manager. Now, for KZN, I do have a list because the KZN guys are helpful to us. Our Psyche Eastern Region chairperson is particularly helpful and good at getting information out of them. But what SARS has committed to is in your branch, in every branch, the branch manager's contact details will be posted. So unfortunately, I can't give them, I do not have access to a national list, but your branch, if you go in, will have your branch manager's details. Right. So the branch managers, I've had fantastic results chatting to the branch managers. Third option, for delays in income tax refunds, you can actually go straight to the OTO, right? So the Office of the Tax Ombudsman, because income tax refunds are listed as systemic, and therefore those you don't have to have done the SARS complaints process yet before you go to the Tax Ombudsman. You can go straight there, right? So that's third option. And the last option is your RCB, so your registered controlling body, because your RCB should have a direct escalation or complaints process within SARS in which these kinds of issues are discussed, especially the time-sensitive stuff. I know, again, I'm using Psyche as an example simply because I'm a member and I'm on 2 committees, and for my sins involved in a lot of the other ad hoc stuff. So we actually I, for example, have a direct line to Mark Kingon and his team, which I can escalate issues through as long as you can come to me, as long as you can at least show that you have called the call center and you have tried to contact the branch manager. And your RCB should have a similar process, because that process is available to all of them. I just don't know how all the different RCBs work. So please, that's the next one. Right, so it is confirm that all information actually is. So call center, CMO, Office of the Tax Ombudsman, branch manager, and last but not least, if you your final resort, if you aren't happy with any of the other ones, court, is actually take it straight to tax court. And we've had successful tax court cases, and the one was an example from 2020 where there was a VAT audit which was started in Feb, didn't get done. By November, they took them to court in October saying, guys, you haven't asked for any additional information. You're not doing anything else. Complaints aren't getting where nothing's happening. Took them to court, and the courts ruled and said, thank you very much, SARS, please pay the taxpayer. And the money and the audit was resolved and put through default judgment. Okay. Don't be afraid to use the courts if they're big enough. Okay. So please, so the order is, if you get your verification request and you've submitted and you've heard nothing, right? First things first is you have to go and my suggestion is just check the call center. There might be something simple. I know the call center currently is really, really, really not working. Okay. I've had multiple complaints on the varying groups I'm on that the last week has been particularly bad, right? If they're not picking up, then what I would do is then I would go straight to branch manager, right, to go and say, I'm not getting through. Ideally with the branch manager, if you can give them a reference number for when you tried to call the call center, it would help, right? So call center, branch manager and CMO, you can kind of do concurrently, right? RCB, tax ombudsman, court, right? So, and yes, you can use your branch manager to escalate cases. They are rethinking their dispute resolution process because they are aware of the fact that it's not working. Okay. Right. Also, if you haven't actually done everything you want, there's two very common reasons, okay, for why the refunds aren't coming through. First thing first is that there's a bank verification hold. And sometimes those aren't always visible to us as tax practitioners, right? So that's one which can cause it. The second issue, which is on our side, not on the SARS side, right, is, well, it's not strictly speaking an issue on our side, but it's not strictly speaking a SARS issue either, is if there's a mismatch between the third-party information and your tax returns. Okay. It is, so for example, I know I've had clients which had issues with ABSA, where they have small investment accounts with ABSA, and for whatever reason, the pre-populated amounts on the IT12 and what went through on the IT3B reconciliations, where there's a mismatch, and that's now causing a hold on the submission of the returns. Okay, so please just check that. 3 other points which have come through from the questions. Number 1, if you've had a bank verification, it does sometimes happen that once you've submitted, SARS doesn't fully lift the stopper on their side, which may just require another call to your another appointment with the tax practitioner unit. I know we shouldn't need to, but that's a problem. The second question was just, again, to repeat for those who didn't hear it earlier, you can only get the branch manager details from your specific branch. They're on posters in the branch. Okay. And then there was a third point about people who have had their refunds approved and then reversed the next day. There was a known system issue, which SARS did release a mailer on around beginning of December, middle of December, where there was some systems issue. They'd promised us it was resolved. If you had someone whose return was approved, reversed, and still has not been paid now, please escalate those as quickly as possible, because those, we were promised that those would be resolved. Okay. Right. For those of you hoping for an extension of the 23rd of January deadline, I would not hold my breath.